Dear Boomers, today my topic is Global Challenge of Aging and Health. Yesterday, I did a talk on my death and my dog. And I just wanted to mention something that happened today. My dog is having problems. She's heading into her 13th birthday this week, and she seemingly has a tumor in her belly that oozes blood. Sorry, but I want to catch it before she starts hemorrhaging. So I just wanted to alert you to what is called Union Bion. You can, if you're having problems with this with your animals, or you yourself can use this stuff, just Google herbal Chinese herb for hemorrhaging and bleeding. Now, this is an amazing herb, and my dog Ulysses years ago was bleeding from a cancerous tumor in his penis, and in order to get him ready for what was to be some surgery, he needed to get his blood count up. So my vet told me about Union Bion, and it immediately stopped the bleeding. And the way this herb was discovered was in the Vietnam War. The North Vietnamese, when they were shot at, they had little vials in their pockets of this Union Bion. They would use it internally, and it would stop the bleeding and probably save their lives. And this is probably why Vietnam War won the war. But don't want to get anybody all messed up on that one, because talking about America not winning a war gets everybody all mad. But let me just say that I ordered that herb for Pearl, and it's going to be coming in the mail hopefully as soon as possible, so we can prevent any further problems. So, in terms of getting back to the global challenge of aging and health, the recent hurricane alerts us all to what happens when, just like that, everybody's homeless because of a storm, or what happens in South and Central America and Mexico and in the Congo and different places in Europe and war-torn countries. These people are having to do something to save their lives. But it's important to prepare health and social systems for this demographic shift, because it's coming. By 2050, 90% of older people will live in low and middle income countries. By 2030, 1 in 6 people will be aged 60 or over. The global population of people age 60 plus will rise from 1 billion in 2020 to 2.1 billion in 2050. And growth in older populations is most rapid in low and middle income countries. So there's a biological process, the diversity of experiences in older age, from physical decline to active and healthy aging. So just because we are aging doesn't mean that we have to become frail, weak, lacking power. I did a video on that recently. There are highlights. There's geriatric syndromes like frailty, falls, and urinary incontinence. Don't have to, drink water and get some sleep and try not to get stressed about what seems to be happening in the world today. And early life environments and socioeconomic factors on aging, everything affects how we become, what we become when we get older. We can't negate what our lives used to be like, and we have to live in the moment, look forward, And as I was doing research on this topic today, I came to realize that gratitude for what we have, and then when you look at what is happening in these war-torn countries and the immigrants who need a home, and we have quite the controversy in this country about these wonderful people who come to America to find a good lifestyle. The need for supportive, and we need supportive environments that allow older folks to thrive despite physical challenges. Ageism and the stereotypes of older adults. We need to see that there is a wide diversity of how people age, and how there doesn't necessarily have to be a decline that is indicative of growing old. Now we are all going to grow old, and we are all going to go into another realm of consciousness. Globalization, urbanization, and migration affects older populations because we need to create public health policies that are responsive to these changes. There is something called the UN Decade of Healthy Aging. They've taken a look from 2021 to 2030, and I think this is very interesting. There are 4 action areas. We have to change how we think about aging. We have to foster communities that support older adults, and we have to deliver integrated care that meet older adult needs. And we need to ensure access to quality long-term care. Now, there is also certainly a lot of us older people want to age in place, and as I said yesterday, having a dog with me, or 2, but they're soon, I'm sure, within another 24 months, I will have 1 dog. That dog keeps me happy. And I find happiness within myself, of course, but I'm constantly pouring love into this dog. I'm constantly telling him how beautiful he is and how much I love him. If I didn't have that in my life, I would probably be very unhappy. But I'm not unhappy, and I think it might be because of my dogs. So the climate disasters that we have just experienced with Helene is a very interesting phenomenon, and it's these climate disasters are projected to get worse and worse, and if we don't do what we need to do to fix the climate crisis. Donald Trump says climate change is a hoax, and if we continue with that philosophy, these problems will get much worse. And then the American South, as we have just seen, has been totally devastated. Climate change displaces people across the United States with a focus on the southern states. And Helene is an example of an extreme weather event that reshaped this whole region. And there's of course a rising cost to climate change and disaster. Storms and hurricanes and rising sea levels are making the southern U.S. less habitable. We can point out the tolls of extreme heat and storms that are transforming perceptions of safety in the region. So the data from the First Street Foundation, 3.2 million Americans have already migrated due to climate threats, with 7.5 million more expected over the next 20 years. Staten Island, Miami, and Galveston are specific areas experiencing out migration. So the vulnerable populations are usually staying behind, and how young and middle class people are more likely to relocate, while the elderly and poor populations are disproportionately left behind. The rising economic and physical vulnerability for these populations, especially older adults who cannot easily move. The southern U.S. is poised to be especially affected by climate migration, with extreme heat and flooding making the regions less prosperous and more expensive to live in. Present findings from this First Street Foundation show how hundreds of thousands of census blocks across the U.S. have reached tipping points for population loss. Inland areas like parts of Texas and Florida are experiencing a shift as people retreat from high-risk zones. So older people are still left behind, and this impacts social services, healthcare, emergency response systems. As far as Helene goes, people say the press says there's 200 people who have died in the storm, but there's 600 or more people who are missing. We have to adapt infrastructure for older adults in climate vulnerable areas and rising homes in flood zones, which may not be feasible for elderly residents. It's an amazing situation. Emergency services will need to change to meet the demands of older, isolated populations left behind in these climate-affected areas. The socio-economic impact of climate migration affects the tax base, reduces funding for essential goods and services, and perpetuates further decline in these communities. The climate change will lead to demographic shifts that are subtle and unexpected. So we need to urge all of us to think about how to support those who are left behind in the wake of climate migration. And I must say, I read another article about what is going on in places like South America, Central America, Mexico, and all across Africa, the droughts, and all of a sudden there is so much food shortage that these people have no choice but to try to migrate to the USA. And of course, we know how that is going. I hope that we can have a empathetic and compassionate attitude for those who are trying to find their way in this world. And it's very important that we have love for all of humanity as we do so. There's going to be a film that comes up right here that I did yesterday. Namaste and subscribe. Bye.